Hello, I'm Dr. Kathy McFarland.
And I'm Mark Bobo.
And welcome to the OSBA Forum. The intent and purpose of the OSBA Forum is to provide you, our members, with up-to-date information regarding the pressing issues within public education.
And at OSBA, we continue to be committed to being the leading voice and support of public education in the state of Ohio. And this forum is yet another example of that support and advocacy. We're excited to bring the forum to you on a monthly basis, and our intent and hope is to bring the policymakers, decision makers, and those that directly impact public education directly to you, our members. And today is no different. Kathy, who are we excited to have with us here today?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We are excited to have Aaron Rausch, the Chief of Budget and School Funding at the Ohio Department of Education, where he manages an agency budget of more than $17 billion and administers the state school funding program. In 2019, Aaron received the Dick Maxwell School Finance Award from the Buckeye Association of School Administrators. And prior to joining ODE in 2014, Aaron worked for the Ohio Office of Budget and Management as a budget analyst in the education section. Aaron started his career in state government as a performance auditor, focusing on school district performance audits at the Ohio Auditor of State's office. Active in his community, Aaron serves as an advisory board member and past president and treasurer of the Columbus and Central Ohio Children's Chorus Foundation. He sings with the choral union at Capital University, and he rides in Pelotonia every year. Oh my gosh, you are very busy. First of all, what do you do about training right now in Ohio? Do you ride your bike?
No. I'm a fair weather cyclist. Like if it's cold or rainy, so April, May, I'll start.
May,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So do you ride inside? Do you train inside on a
No,
bike?
just outside.
Just outside.
Yeah.
That's
and Columbus
really
is fortunate to have a lot of great bike trails, so a lot of great reasons to get out.
Very good. And Mark, remind me, if we have time, we're going to ask him to sing.
Right.
All right.
It's on the list.
Anyways, Aaron, I did share some background about you, but can you tell us a little bit about your journey to this position and why you feel that your work is so important to the students in the state of Ohio?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to join you, and it's good to join OSBA members. I am a product of public education. I graduated from Marysville High School. I attribute my path in state government and public administration to a high school government teacher, Dick Smith, who's now on the school board in Marysville.
Oh, yeah, what our member is. Yeah, that's
nice. So my mom was in public service. My sister is a teacher in Marysville. So I value, public education, and the funding that we provide to schools and districts is critical for all of the great work that our schools across the state do each day.
Oh, very good.
So I had no intent or plan to get involved in education finance, but after starting at the Auditor of State's office and then working in the budget office, I consider myself very fortunate to be at the Department of Education the last 9 years and leading the work of school funding for the state.
Yeah, thank you. And a big shout out to your sister and your mom for their service.
Certainly. Well, we know that you work closely with the State Board of Education regarding the state budget and their recommendations. Can you just share with us some of the priorities in regards to that budget?
Sure. I know that many of you maybe heard from Dr. Siddons, our interim superintendent of public instruction last month, and she led with our budget committee the development of the budget priorities that they submitted to the governor, and ultimately we were fortunate to see a lot of the state board's recommendations included in the governor's as introduced version of the budget. We started planning probably 9 months ago now, working with our State Board of Education members to identify what their priorities were. Those priorities surrounded literacy, learning acceleration, workforce readiness, and also operational efficiencies at the Department of Education. And so over the course of a number of months, we put together recommendations, and again, we're excited to see those included in the governor's as introduced version of the budget.
Okay.
So when we're looking at that proposed budget, it said the budget came out about a month ago. Can you tell us maybe about the timeline in regards to the budget implementation?
Sure. The governor submitted, he had his State of the State. The budget recommendations came out the same day, January 31st, and now begins the 5-month process where those recommendations move through the legislative process. So Dr. Siddons and I were in the House Finance Committee a few weeks ago testifying on the budget proposals that were included for the Department of Education. We will be in the Finance Subcommittee later this week. And then following that, there are plenty of opportunities for board members, for community members, for school leaders to testify in front of the House of Representatives on the topic of the governor's budget proposal, as well as things that maybe were not included or that folks would like to change through the process. So the House will wrap up their work sometime at the end of April, and then it will move to the Senate. The process starts over again. We'll be back in the Senate Finance Committee testifying. There'll be another round of opportunity for folks to advocate. I will tell you that school board members are great advocates. Their voices are heard at the State House, and it's important that they are connecting with their legislators to make sure that the House and Senate members know what the budget means for public education and how either folks are supportive of it or how we could make improvements.
I was going to ask you about that. A lot of board members ask, does their advocacy mean anything when they do testimonies down at the State House? And you're saying absolutely.
Absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely. And I would also say that, connecting with your representative in the district, inviting them to your school, explaining to them the importance of the resources that you get from the state, as well as the benefit of some of the new and exciting proposals that we've included in the budget will impact schools and districts is critically important.
Right. And if you're looking for information in regards how to go about that, please make sure that you reach out to our OSBA legislative team. You ready for me to go?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Aaron, can you talk about the phase-in of the fair school funding formula?
Sure. I think that I will first say that the budget includes about $1.6 billion in new spending for primary and secondary education over the next 2 years. So when we look at what is the governor proposing in fiscal years 24, fiscal years 25, how does that compare with what the state is currently spending in support of primary and secondary education? It's about $1.5 billion in new resources, which is a pretty significant investment. The largest part of the Department of Education's budget, the single largest expenditure of state resources is the school funding formula. If we think about all of the expenditures of state government, all funds, right? Medicaid is usually what we think about as being the largest expenditure of state government. But if we're only looking at the state's general revenue fund, the state lottery, which is earmarked for primary and secondary education, the school funding formula has been and will continue to be the largest part of that pie. So we were excited to see that the governor continued the phase-in of the new school funding formula. I know your members, our local superintendents, local treasurers, worked over the course of a number of years in advocating for that, and so they were successful in securing that in the current operating budget. So we were happy to see that the governor continued to phase that in over the next 2 years. What that means is that for many districts, it'll be additional state resources in 2024 and 25 over current year levels, based on the great work that those folks did over the last several years. I would recommend to your members, if you want to see continued phase-in of the school funding formula, that'll certainly be something that you share with your local legislators.
Let me ask, during this time, of course, with the budget and things that are going through, the concern is some of the resources that are going towards ed choice and that being in the atmosphere. However, we do understand that there are greater supports being offered directly to public education and how there's different funding, the funds that are going out that have a direct impact on public education are still there. Can you just articulate some of those resources that are being allocated specifically to public education?
Sure, absolutely. I would say that generally the governor's budget is about helping all schools, all districts, and all students. And sometimes that means that families want to make choices about either attending a neighboring district through open enrollment, which a lot of our local school districts allow, open enrollment being the original school choice option, school choice being the opportunity to go to a community school or to an online school. And that also means participation in one of our 5 state-funded scholarship programs for through both the Ed Choice or Cleveland Scholarship Program, or one of our scholarship programs for special needs students, the John Peterson and Autism Scholarship. I will say that all of those programs are receiving additional support, and that increases in one program is not crowding out funding for another program. I really think that the governor focused in his proposal of the budget on, again, all students in all schools in all districts. The thing that I would add, I guess, about the school funding formula is that one of the benefits of this new formula is direct funding.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest concerns that folks over the last several years have expressed as there have become more school choice options for families and students is that we continue to fund students where they lived,
Right.
and then deducted funding away to send money to a family to use for a voucher, for a community school student, et cetera. And so I really think that one of the best features of this new school funding formula is direct funding. And so we now fund all students where they are educated rather than where they live. And that makes for one, a simpler funding formula, and second, a more transparent funding formula, so that we can see, the money that is going to Columbus is staying in Columbus. The money that is going to Marysville is staying in Marysville.
And that's important to our membership.
Absolutely.
To have that continued support in that public education. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mark, I don't know if you've noticed the increase in commercials about sports gaming. So, Aaron, can you talk to us a little bit about sports gaming in Ohio and how those profits of sports gaming will be used when it comes to public education?
Sure. The General Assembly enacted legislation in their last session that legalized sports gaming, and like you said, if you have not seen or heard any of the sports gaming ads, you have been, under a rock.
Right.
So it is exciting that all of the profits from sports gaming will get deposited into what is called the Sports Gaming Profits Education Fund. So the legislature has earmarked those dollars for K-12 education. Half of the funds have to be used for extracurriculars, and the department will disperse it in that way. And then the other half is used in support of both public and non-public students. Those dollars are in addition to the funds that are through the school funding formula. So just like, you can ask your school treasurer, just like the state disperses revenues from casinos to schools twice a year, we will begin to disperse sports gaming funds in addition to all of the other state funds that schools and districts receive. So we're excited about that too. It is not just about the school funding formula in this budget. There are additional resources for schools and districts through a number of different and new initiatives. So we were talking, what is the revenue that is projected? I think that it is still very early, and seemingly there's been a great interest in sports gaming. The Ohio Department of Taxation projected about $30 million a year in new revenue. And so that's $60 million for primary and secondary education over the next 2 years that we don't have today. Right. We will likely find out in the next 6 to 9 months if those projections are low or if there are additional resources available. If that happens, then there'll be resources available for the General Assembly in the next budget to appropriate, again, restricted to and in support of primary and secondary education.
Wow, that's great.
Very good. Let's see, what resources do you recommend for local board members to stay up to date on school finances? So there's a lot going on, there's a lot of information out there. What would you recommend to our members where they can go to and find some good up-to-date information?
Sure. So I would say that if you want to do a deep dive into school funding and to understand how your specific district's school funding is calculated, we have a companion guide to all the payment reports that we put on our website. It's called the Line by Line. I recommend you, as a board member, sitting down with your treasurer and walking through to understand how is this new funding formula impacting my local district. But that resource is on our website. It's a great way to look at your payment reports and understand, what is not just what is my district generating, but we all know that you are thinking about your local school district in relation to maybe a neighboring district or a district in another county. And so it's a good way for you to socialize yourself with, from start to finish, from how many students you have, what your property values are, what the residents' income, what the residents in your district have by way of income. Those are the building blocks to determining what state funding is provided to each district. In terms of budget resources, I know that Jennifer Hogue and your legislative team will be sharing out a lot of great resources over the next, what is now 4.5 months as we continue through the budget process. The Legislative Service Commission is where I go. It is where most folks go for neutral, nonpartisan information about the state budget. So they will release what is called a Red Book. It's an analysis of the state's operating budget, and we'll look specifically at the Department of Education's budget. There's also great resources on the Office of Budget and Management's website. That's where you can find the simulations, the printouts of what the governor's proposal related to school funding is likely going to give to your school district over the next 2 years. It also includes a lot of great facts and information about some of the new exciting things that are in the executive budget.
It's nice. It takes the guessing away.
Oh, yeah. And so, Aaron, as we were talking before we started today, you have a vast travel schedule, even this week, talking about the budget and things that are coming. Just from our conversation today, what would you like our members to take away as far as the one takeaway from the conversation?
I think that, as I mentioned, this budget is about serving all students in all schools in all districts. And, the governor feels very strongly about that. Dr. Siddons feels very strongly about that, that it is about making sure that all of our students, regardless of the school they're attending, the community that they live in, have the resources to thrive and succeed. Our children, our students are our greatest asset in the state of Ohio. And as Ohio continues to grow and have a lot of great, exciting economic development opportunities, it's important that we are investing critical resources in primary and secondary education.
Very good. Is there anything that you wanted to add to our conversation before we wrap up today? Things that maybe we didn't touch upon?
I will say a couple of things,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. And that really is, related to the state board's priorities, related to the budget, and all of the additional funding outside of what are pretty significant increases in the school funding formula. So I will just mention a couple if that's okay. Yeah. The first is early childhood education. We hear every time that we are out talking to schools and districts, when will additional state resources be available for early childhood education? We know that a lot of districts operate their own programs in addition to serving preschool students with disability, or special education students with disabilities. So the budget makes a pretty significant investment in new access to early childhood education. We currently serve about 17,000 students with our half-day early childhood education or preschool slots, primarily in schools and districts, and the budget would add an additional 11,500 slots for half-day preschool. That is, again, in addition to above and beyond what is in the school funding formula. The next thing I would mention is related to career technical education. Workforce readiness has been a priority of the governor's office, particularly the lieutenant governor, as he leads the governor's office of workforce transformation. And there's a significant investment, again, outside of the formula for career technical education. I know that your members, many of them serve on their joint vocational school district board, or many school districts have their own career technical education programs. So this budget includes $300 million in new funding for career tech facilities, career tech equipment. The goal is providing more access, again, to all students, be it you attending a joint vocational school district, satellite program at your home school, and whatnot, to be able to access high quality career technical education. Because again, as we are attracting exciting opportunities like Intel, like Honda, and exciting economic development opportunities across the state, it's important that, again, we have a trained workforce and our students are prepared and able to engage in those career opportunities upon their graduation. So that would be the second thing that I mentioned. The last thing is school resource officers. We hear it when we are out. I know that your members have concerns about it. There's been significant investment in some of our federal COVID relief funds to add school safety equipment. The Ohio Facilities Construction Commission has had a number of rounds of school safety equipment grants, and the thing that I think the governor has heard over and over is that we really want to have school resource officers in our schools so that students feel safe when they come to school every day. And that is a local decision, it's a community decision, and different communities can come to different decisions on that. But what the governor has proposed, again, in addition to all of the school funding formula changes, is the access for every building in every school, every district, to have access to a school resource officer. And so there's a significant investment in new resources in the budget, about $194 million each year, that would allow, if a district wants to opt in and request funds in support of school resource officers. So, I think that in that respect, the governor has heard concerns that are expressed by local, school board members, by administrators, by parents, and wants to make this option available. So we were excited to see that also included in the governor's proposal. So those are just three things, but they really represent, again, resources above and beyond the school funding formula. And I guess maybe I'll add a second takeaway, which is that's what I would encourage folks to not just focus on and think about the school funding formula, which is going to benefit most districts across the state, but is also these other exciting things: early childhood education, literacy supports, career technical education, student safety. So there's a lot of great things to be excited about in this budget.
And there was exciting things that you shared with us today, and I think for our membership to know that we still have the governor's support in regards to making sure that all of our children have the access that they need to be successful, I think that's very important to our membership, and that's great to hear, Kathy.
Right, and I think it's great that we have options, because once again, it goes back to local control. What's best for your community, what's best for your students, and as a leadership team, as our board members sit on, they need to make those decisions, and they need to have those conversations. So it is nice to have those options if that's the route that you decide to go.
Yeah.
So. Any more?
That's it.
Okay. Aaron, we want to thank you for being with us today. We appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue with you.
We want to thank you again for Aaron being here with us today, and we hope our membership has appreciated this time that we've had together. Listen, these OSBA forums are here to make sure that you have the up-to-date information that's necessary for you and your leadership there in your district. So again, join us at our next OSBA forum in March. Make sure you register at the website, ohioschoolboards.org, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Yes, thanks, Mark, and thank you, Aaron, for joining us. And thank all of you for your service to public education and the students of Ohio. We'll see you in March.